Hiya, the first thing I wanted to quickly say is I've got back from the hospital and I got my splint. They wanted to put another cast on, but I begged for a splint, and as long as I promised not to take it off, I was allowed a splint. But of course, in a minute I'm going to go jump in the bath and it's coming off. But I am going to be very careful, and I'm not going to do anything stupid, so my arm is safe. But this video is really a video response to Mental Health Help UK's video on mental illness and work. It's very hard for me to actually talk about what I used to do as a job, because I kind of feel like I let them down a lot, and I've always been quite ashamed of it, but I kind of really want to explain what happened to me work-wise, and so I need to say what I did really. Basically I was a nanny, a private nanny. I worked for a lovely family who had a set of twins, and another family who had 2 boys. They were aged 2 and 4 when I started nannying them, and when I left they were 3 and 5. The job with the twins I absolutely adored. I was part of the family. I started looking after the twins when they were 11 weeks old, and when I left they were 3 and a half. I worked for them 2 days a week, doing 10-hour days. The other family I worked for 3 days a week, doing 10-hour days. And although I didn't get on as well with the second family, I still really enjoyed my job. I've always wanted to be a nanny. I did a 2-year course at college to become a nanny, and it kind of, I never ever wanted to do anything else. But I mean, all through school and college I struggled with depression and self-harm and eating disorders. And when I became a nanny, I was really, really good at separating my personal problems, I guess, from work. And I did that for a long time. And then it just got to the point where I couldn't physically cope anymore. I tried so hard to keep the act, I guess, going, and getting up, going for work, putting a smile on my face, and it just got to the point where I couldn't do it. So reluctantly I left my 2-day-a-week job with the twins and went down to just working part-time, although it still was 30 hours a week. I was only working 3 days. I did this for a further 4 months, but by that point my mental health had really deteriorated. I had moved back in with my parents for a while because I couldn't cope living alone. I was struggling to just function, and I tried so hard to not let it affect my job. I gave everything to keeping my job, because I thought if I lost my job, that was it, I'd lost everything, and I just couldn't bear the thought of it really. But unfortunately, when you are that ill, you cannot keep the act up. And I remember one day going to work and getting halfway up the stairs and just sitting down on the stairs and crying, and I didn't move for hours. I'm ashamed to say it, but I didn't look after the children that day. I just sat on the stairs and cried and kind of left the children to it really, and I'm deeply ashamed of that. But I physically couldn't move. I wasn't just mentally exhausted, I was physically exhausted, and I just couldn't move. Anyway, that evening I took one of my overdoses, and I spent a few days in hospital, and when I came out of hospital, I asked to come and meet with the mother of the children, and I just told her that I couldn't cope anymore, and I told her that I'd been in hospital, and I said that I needed the time off. My doctor had signed me off at that point anyway, and I said, I just couldn't cope, and I just had to just have some time. She was very good, and listened to what I had to say. She said she was really shocked because she had no idea, and I guess I only used to see her for 5 minutes in the morning and then 5 minutes in the evening. I could put on that face for her, the happy face. So anyway, I went home, and the following day she phoned my dad and told my dad that she didn't want me to come back. And then she wrote me a letter explaining why, saying that obviously she needed childcare for her children, and she couldn't have somebody that couldn't be reliable. And I was devastated, really. It really hurt. Like I say, I at that point I just gave up. As far as I was concerned, I'd lost everything. And so I've never seen that family since. And it was really hard because, I looked after them children for over a year, and, I loved them. But it was actually the best thing that could have happened to me, really, because I needed time to focus on myself. I needed to accept that I was ill, which I couldn't do when I was trying to keep up this kind of false life. Now that was just over 3 years ago. As most of you are aware, I do a bit of voluntary work now, but I haven't worked properly since. At first I really struggled financially. I was given incapacity benefits, and I received them for 3 months and then had to go for a medical. I had to go quite far for this medical, and at the time I was very poorly and I was so stressed about it. My sister had to take the day off work to take me, and we got all of the way there and I got called in, and basically the lady said, "Do you know why you're here?" And I said yes, and she said, "Can you tell me how your depression has affected you over the last few weeks?" And it was actually the previous weekend I had been sectioned by the police under section 136. So I said, well, last weekend I was under section 136 as a mental health act by the police, and the doctor said, "Oh, I just need to go and speak to somebody a minute," and she came back about a minute later and said, "Oh, you can go, that's fine." And that was that. So I've been on incapacity benefits for 3 years, and I struggled financially really badly because I wasn't entitled to full housing benefits, because I still had my flat, and I stayed with my parents for 4 months and then I moved back into my own flat. And because I was under the age of 25, I wasn't entitled to full housing benefits. I was only entitled to a certain amount, and so as for my incapacity benefits, which I think was £60 a week, obviously I had to survive as well as pay the vast majority of my rent, and this was really difficult, and it actually made my depression a lot worse because I was so stressed about it and things. But after a little while I applied for disability living allowance, and I did this just with the help of my dad, and I was turned down, but one of my support workers took me to something called the Independent Living Centre, and their job is to help you to claim benefits that you're entitled to. And because they do this day in day out, they are really good at filling out the forms and know what needs to be written. And so we reapplied for disability living allowance, and I was actually given high rate care and low rate mobility. This gave me an extra £400 a month. I couldn't believe it, really. I went from, getting, just over £60 a month to suddenly getting, £60 every week, to suddenly getting, the £60 a week still, as well as disability living allowance. But also, because I got disability living allowance, I was then entitled to income support, which gives me, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but about £101 every 2 weeks, I think it is. And also, as soon as I hit 25, I was entitled to full housing benefits. So I went from struggling financially to actually being okay. I probably get altogether just under what somebody would normally earn in a full-time job on minimum wage. I mean, being on benefits was not something I ever planned to do. I'd always wanted to work and fend for myself, but I needed to take this time to get better, and I couldn't have done it if I was still trying to work. So I would say to anyone that is really struggling to maintain their job, even though they're struggling with their mental health issues, that there are ways out there to support yourself financially, and it might be a case of finding the right person to help you to fill out the forms and to make sure that it's all written in a way that is best to support your case. But please don't try to struggle on like I did, because it was ridiculous. I couldn't look after myself, let alone maintain my job. My long-term goals is to obviously get back to work, but I do not know when that will be, and my mental health comes first, and I will not go back to work until I am better. Like I said earlier, I do voluntary work. I can't at the moment because I haven't been well, but when I am feeling well enough to, I do have 2 voluntary jobs, and I love my voluntary jobs, and my long-term plan is for hopefully one of them to lead to a job. And so, when you do get onto benefits, it doesn't mean that you have to give up on, working altogether. You can, go back to work when you're ready, and you can do voluntary work. So it's not giving up, it's just giving you a chance to get better. And I think, sometimes that's just what you need to do.